I wish you weren't my boss. I wish you weren't my boss.
I wish you weren't my boss.
I wish you weren't my boss. I wish you weren't my boss.
Really?
I wish you weren't my boss. I wish you weren't my boss. I wish you weren't my boss.
You really wish that?
I wish you weren't my boss.
I wish you weren't my boss. The words escaped Caleb's mouth so quietly that he thought they would disappear into the hum of the empty office. He lowered his head, rubbed his tired eyes, and stared at the resignation letter on his desk. He had no idea that someone was standing less than 6 feet behind him, listening to every word. If you believe that kindness, forgiveness, hope, compassion, and second chances can change a person's life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes, the person we judge most quickly may be carrying a burden we know nothing about. Caleb Morgan had worked at a small architecture firm in Chicago, Illinois, for almost 4 years. He was talented, dependable, and usually the first person to arrive and the last to leave. But over the past 6 months, something inside him had changed. His wife, Rachel, had passed away unexpectedly after a long illness, leaving Caleb to raise their 9-year-old son, Micah, while trying to keep his career from falling apart. He rarely talked about his grief. Instead, he buried himself in work and pretended that everything was fine. His boss, Grace Whitmore, seemed to make everything harder. She was demanding, direct, and almost impossible to impress. She corrected his drawings, questioned his decisions, and constantly pushed him to work faster. Caleb began believing that Grace simply didn't care about what he was going through. What he didn't know was that Grace had noticed every sleepless night, every missed lunch, and every time he quietly checked his phone hoping the school wasn't calling about Micah. That Friday evening, Caleb had received another difficult assignment. He was exhausted, frustrated, and convinced Grace was preparing to replace him. When he thought she had finally left the office, he stared at the resignation letter and whispered those words that would change everything: "I wish you weren't my boss." Then he heard a calm voice behind him. Grace asked him if that was really what he wanted. Caleb froze. His face turned pale as he slowly looked over his shoulder. Grace stood there holding a folder against her chest. She didn't look angry. She looked tired. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Caleb expected a lecture, maybe even a termination notice. Instead, Grace walked to his desk and placed the folder beside his resignation letter. Inside was a promotion proposal with a flexible schedule, a salary increase, and permission to work from home several days each week. Caleb stared at the papers, completely confused. Grace finally admitted that she had been trying to push him because she believed he was capable of more, not because she wanted him gone. She told him that after losing her own younger brother years earlier, she had learned something painful: sometimes people don't need someone to lower expectations for them. Sometimes they need someone to remind them that they are still capable of standing after life knocks them down. Caleb's eyes filled with tears. For months, he had mistaken Grace's strictness for cruelty. He had never imagined that she had been quietly protecting his position while giving him opportunities to succeed. But Grace wasn't finished. She opened another folder. Inside was a letter from a local community organization that sponsored educational programs for children. Grace had recommended Micah for a weekend science program because she had discovered his love for building things. She had even arranged for Caleb to receive the weekend off. That was the moment Caleb finally broke down. Not because he was weak, but because someone had finally noticed how hard he had been trying. He apologized for what he had said. Grace smiled gently and told him that she had been a difficult boss, and maybe sometimes too demanding, but she had never wanted him to believe he was alone. The following Monday, Caleb returned to work with a different heart. He still worked hard, but now he understood that Grace wasn't standing against him. She had been standing behind him, even when he couldn't see it. Months later, Caleb completed the biggest project of his career. During the celebration, he brought Micah with him. As everyone applauded, Caleb looked across the room at Grace and realized that sometimes life sends help in a form we don't immediately recognize. Before we reach the end, if this story touched something inside your heart, please support the video with a like, share it with someone who needs a second chance, and subscribe. Your simple support can help stories like this reach someone who may be struggling silently. And before you leave, write one word in the comments: second chance. Let it be a reminder that we should never judge someone, or someone who is trying to help us, before understanding the heart behind their actions. Caleb once wished Grace wasn't his boss. But years later, he would tell people that she was one of the greatest reasons he never gave up.